Let me open with a number. The one that has made me sit up straight the most this year. Inside Anthropic's own product engineering team, 65% of code commits now get kicked off by an agent that lives inside Slack. Not someone opening an IDE, writing the thing, then asking it for a hand. The agent itself, right there in the chat window, starts the work from scratch. The entry point for writing code is quietly moving out of that editor you know so well and into the chat window. Here is the takeaway up front. This is not the clickbait version, the one that says the IDE is dead. It is more subtle than that. The starting point of your work is changing. And the fun part, the person who actually built this product is way more restrained than the headlines. I listened to the whole interview, start to finish. Today I'll walk you through it and sort out whether Slack really becomes the new IDE. First, let's get our bearings. The person talking is Lamis Mukta, an engineer on Anthropic's applied AI team. That team sits in a funny spot, wedged between product, research, and commercialization, facing both customers and the internal side. On July 7th, she came on a developer podcast to break down Claude Tag, which they had just shipped.
Quick disclosure, let me pin this down. Claude Tag is Anthropic's own product, and Lamis is the one building it. So every bit of praise coming up carries a marketing tint. Treat it as promo, and I'll flag sources for the numbers where I can.
Thanks. So let's get clear on what Claude Tag actually is, and how it is different from just pinging Claude in Slack today. On the surface, they look almost identical. Both are you talking to Claude inside Slack. But Lamis went out of her way to stress 3 differences underneath. 1. Initiative. Normally when you ping Claude, it is one question, one answer. Leave it alone and it just sits there quietly. Claude Tag pushes a workflow forward on its own for a long stretch, reports back when it is done, and sometimes flips it around, coming to find you, reminding you there is something you need to handle. 2. Memory. It has memory across channels. It is talking to all your coworkers at once, and that understanding keeps stacking up over time. So it gradually gets the full picture of your team's work, instead of starting from 0 every time. 3. It breaks the old rule where a conversation ends and the context wipes clean. Speaking of memory, they built a dedicated mechanism with a pretty romantic name, Dreaming. The gist is this. When it is idle, it goes back over the pile of context. It is built up with you and the team, sorts through it again, keeps what is useful, and squeezes out the noise. Like a person sleeping on it, turning a messy day into a few clear threads. There is just one goal. So that next time it comes to you, it remembers the right things, instead of dumping every chat log in a heap. The host followed up with a very concrete scenario, and I think that scenario is the real point. A team usually talks through requirements and bugs in Slack, files a ticket in Linear on the side, then summons Claude to build it, and finally, it opens a PR for you to review. In the old flow, somewhere in that chain you had to open Claude code to direct it. Now, Lamis says, that whole end-to-end chain can run entirely inside one Slack message thread. A piece of feedback comes in, Claude Tag catches it first, automatically pings the right person, automatically creates the ticket in Linear, and then, the most crucial step. It spins up its own sandbox, runs code and validates it in the repos. It has been granted access to, confirms the requirements are met, and only comes back to notify you once the PR is ready. The whole time, you never opened an IDE.
It also has a permission system, isolated by channel. Whichever channel grants it access, it can read that channel's context, including a support channel you may never have been watching, where the clues about where a bug started are sitting. It can dig those out and hand them to you.
Lamis also called out cross-team coordination, something a plain coding assistant could barely pull off before. A support ticket comes in, and it can loop in the manager who owns that customer to keep them posted on progress. When it comes back with a plan, it pulls in engineers and product managers to weigh in. When it is time to review the code and ship, it brings the engineers back in. The whole thing is a group of people orbiting one agent, not one person hunched over one tool. Put those two pieces together. A single ticket from who handles it, to who reviews it, to who ships it. All in one chat thread, with people and the agent pushing it forward together. That picture, versus the one in your head of a programmer in headphones typing alone at a pitch-black editor. Those are two different worlds now. With the product covered, the conversation turned to something more fundamental. The way we work is changing. This is the part I think is the most valuable of the whole episode. When you use Claude Code, the experience feels very solo. You run code locally, open isolated sessions, one by one, state the goal, manage the context, check the result, and loop again. It is just you against the machine. Claude Tag is different. It is multiplayer from the very start. You kick off a coding flow, and it actively goes and asks the people who should be involved for their take. You don't have to go track down product or sales yourself. That gets folded straight into the workflow. And it is all out in the open. Everyone involved can see the progress from the very beginning. There is another big difference. It is asynchronous. With Claude Code, you can watch every single turn, and it does that well. But Claude Tag is more about those long-running, async tasks. You send a command, and hours later it might come back to you with a fully built feature. You hand the work off and trust it, and it calls you the moment it is done.
Two numbers from the outside world. One is what we said earlier. Inside Anthropic, 65% of PRS are kicked off by Claude Tag. It has become the default entry point for starting work. The other Stripe used this tooling to rewrite its entire codebase. What used to take weeks or even months now gets done in days, sometimes hours. The bigger the scale, the more dramatically it pays off.
Okay, the numbers are impressive. But what really earned this episode, my respect, is the host throwing that clickbait question right in her face. Is Slack really going to become the new IDE? Lamis's answer was restrained. She said, she doesn't see the two as fully replacing each other. Each has its own place and its own use. What she agrees with is that the mode of interaction is shifting, but she never said the IDE is getting killed off. See, this is the value of relaying it to you. The headline shouts that Slack becomes the IDE, but the person who built the thing with her own hands held that claim back. What she said was the entry point is moving, not the editor is dying. So what is the real hard data? She pointed to one that isn't Anthropic's own. Research from Metcher. The stretch of time an AI agent can run on its own roughly doubles every 4 months. And this exponential curve has held for nearly a decade. Every time you think it is about to top out, it breaks the pattern again.
The key thing about this Metcher number is that it is not a vendor tooting its own horn. It measures how long a task an agent can carry on its own. The longer it can carry, the more it usually means the work is more complex, more multi-step, and it can self-verify partway through. This curve is the real engine behind the entry point moving.
Lamis flagged one more technical trend that I think regular folks should know about too. A lot of what used to need an outer layer of scaffolding, a framework, to help the model along, like checking whether its code is right for it. That is now getting tucked, bit by bit, into the model itself. Before the model reports back that it is done, it increasingly checks its own work first. Running the front end, running the tests, even writing itself an evaluation. In other words, it is not just more capable, it is more accountable for its own work. Those two things together are what hold up the entry point moving into the chat window. Because it can carry a longer task on its own and check its own work, you can finally dare to send it off with one line in the chat window and walk away for hours. Following that, she put out a claim that holds for every developer. More and more now comes down to whether you can clearly define, in a given situation, what counts as done well. If you can, hand it to the model and let it loop, or have another agent review it over and over until it passes. Here is an example, beyond just coding. Say you need a market analysis. The core skill used to be whether you could produce that analysis. The core skill now is increasingly whether you can spell out what a good market analysis looks like, what it has to cover, and what counts as passing. The clearer you are, the better the machine does it for you. On the machine's end, it is getting better and better at execution. On the human end, the core skill is shifting from, can you write it, to can you define what good looks like? Step back, and this has actually been happening throughout history. The way we talk to machines keeps moving closer to the way humans think. First, it was punch cards, then typing commands at a command line, then editors with a graphical interface. And now it is you speaking plain language in a chat window. Each time, the barrier drops a notch, and a new batch of people can pick it up. Whether the chat window is the endpoint, I don't know, but the direction hasn't changed in decades. Here is my take. The line that Slack becomes the new IDE is clickbait. Even the person building the product won't sign off on it. But the trend underneath it is real. The entry point for your work is moving toward whatever's closest to your daily routine. For a lot of people, that place is the chat window. What does that mean? It means over the next 2 years, the barrier to working with AI drops so low, you won't even notice you're using a tool. But the trade-off is, the less you open that editor, the more you need a different skill. Spelling out what you actually want, and what counts as right. I'm watching one very specific signal. When the first person on your team shows up, who defaults to handing off work in the chat window instead of opening an IDE? The day that person shows up is the day this move reaches you. Alright, that is it for this round. Next round, I'll keep relaying it to you.